Welcome to the Bucs Banter Podcast. I am your host, Collin Hallboom. I am joined by my co-host, Bodan Yard, and we are back after a fairly substantial hiatus, likely our longest break from the Bucs Banter Podcast. But if you're going to take one, you got to do it in the off season. So this is our 78th episode, and we want to talk about Baker Mayfield, who was just named the Buccaneers starting quarterback, the first starting quarterback post Tom Brady, and plenty of other training camp observations. So we brought in an old friend, JC Allen. He's not old, but he is a friend. He's one of the OGs, one of our first guests here on the show of Pewter Report. JC's as plugged in as it gets. JC, how you been, dude? Like, how's the offseason treating you, man?
There's no off season when you're in it. There's always something going on, some news to break, articles to write, engagement to happen. But busy, just staying busy. Obviously, we got the season ramping up here, training camp winding down, the last practice this week before the game, and then they start to get into game prep for Minnesota. So it's wind down a little bit, but still, pedal to the metal. We got a game coming up, and then roster cuts right after that, waiver wire claims. So football season's here, and I'm so excited it's back.
For sure, and thank God for Ira Kaufman breaking the news about Baker Mayfield being named the starting quarterback. I say that in jest because I think that was floated often and it was viewed as this like breaking report. But I do want to just talk about that decision. I mean, it's clearly not a surprise to anyone who's been around the team and really to anyone who was on the outside looking in. I think most people saw this coming. How do you think the team handled it? Like, do you think there was anything to them framing it as a competition, or maybe it was a genuine competition? Like, how do you feel about that? I'm curious.
Well, no shade to Ira at all. I just, it is something that you meant. It was surmised right from the beginning, and it wasn't that the fact that there wasn't going to be a competition. I think Ira truly was told by his sources while he was in Canton that Baker was the guy. The problem that I have with those sources is the sources that were telling me that nothing was completed was his sources weren't the coaching staff. They were still in Tampa Bay. His coaches were more front office personnel, and while they're plugged in as anybody, and again, no shade. He's been around. He knows his stuff. I just don't think that was 100% confirmed yet until we got it confirmed on Monday. Well, if some of us knew a little bit sooner than that, but I think with it, the goal was always to get the best man to win that job. Baker was always one step above, right? 69 career games. They really liked Baker last year. If Tom did retire, they were going to bring Baker in probably to be that starting quarterback. They would have been in that trade mix. So they've had an infatuation with Baker over the last couple of years. I think where you look at the competition factor, just look no further than where Dave Canales was last with Seattle, with Geno Smith and with Drew Lock. Drew Lock had more game experience, obviously, than Kyle Trask, but the competition factor there is twofold, right? It brings out the best in people. It brings out the best in those guys. And what you're doing is if you're not 100% sold, the old saying goes, you got two quarterbacks, you got none. If you're not 100% sold, Baker can bounce back, pre-injury form, limit the turnovers. Well, guess what? Now you just created an environment where your number one starters have significant reps with Trask as well. If Baker needs to get pulled due to ineffectiveness, turnovers, or gets injured, Trask is stepping in with the full confidence of that first team unit on offense and defense. They've both seen him. They both played up against him on defensive side. They've worked with him on the offensive side. It's not a lost season if your number two quarterback comes in, which can be with some scenarios. It's we got trust. We know what he can do. We saw it all off season. And that's another side to this, I think, equation that having this quarterback competition and battle go so long was beneficial for the team in the long run.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I think like Trask, I think it's great that, he showed patience, poise. He showed the ability to play within the system and take care of the football, no doubt. But those traits generally kind of like scream back up anyway. Like, I feel like the ceiling's just different with Baker in the mix as the starter. But like you're saying, like, it's beneficial for Trask to have gotten those reps with the ones and for them to have got it with him. Is that Kyle Trask's ceiling, though? Like, as a backup, you think? Or do you think one day he'll get a shot if you had to kind of throw your hat in one way or the other?
I think when you look at Kyle Trask and the Baker comparison, right? Baker obviously more experienced, had his best season as a pro in a similar style offense under Kevin Stefanski. That's kind of branched out from that Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay scheme. So he was going to pick it up faster, and that's just one of the things that ultimately led to that decision. Is Baker's grasp of the playbook right now is higher than Trask's, and not only that, decisiveness. You can see Trask just thinking about it just a half second longer than before he makes those throws. But when they drafted him, they said all the right things. Check up from the neck up. We heard the last year deliberate learner. We've heard Dave Canales talk about how Trask, he asking once or twice, he wants to make sure he knows it down pat. I think with Trask, there's an opportunity for him potentially. But if you continue to look at there's always going to be new quarterbacks coming into the draft. Next year is going to be a wild class with potentially up to 5 or 6 first round quarterbacks off the board. So, if I don't necessarily see another team bringing in, at the end of his contract, and not this year, but next year, and saying, let's bring him in to compete for ones. If there's a situation where Baker gets injured or is ineffective, he plays lights out, and then, or just shows that he can do it at a high level, yet the Bucs still end up yielding an early round pick and draft a quarterback of the future. Maybe a team might look at him as someone who could be thrown into a mix of a competition. I don't think anyone's ever going to sign him as this. We liked him coming out of the draft. He's done enough to prove, let's make him our starter or put him right in that battle. So, it's unlikely that he ever gets a chance to be a starter in the league, but crazier things have happened. Look at Geno Smith, and in the route that he took. But I think, career backup probably is what Trask's ceiling is right now at this point. Things can change, but right now I think backup is where he's probably going to stick for his career.
It's pretty tough in the NFL right now. It feels like there's a lot of bona fide ones, so it's like a tough time to be one of those fringe starters, backup quarterbacks, because like where's the spot? You know what I mean? And I feel like to JC's point, like next year's draft, we're going to see a bunch of quarterbacks come in through that as well too. There's a lot of spots that it's spoken for not just like the next few years, like a lot of like institutional quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Right.
Yeah, like there's even ones like people forget about, like even like Matt Stafford, you know what I mean? Like, he lit it up at the joint practice with the Broncos today. Like there's just dudes there who are still good, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of them. You're right, Bo. I want to talk about the team that's going to be around Baker. And I mean, again, because we've been off the airwaves for a little bit, we haven't hit on the Russell Gage injury, and like prayers up for Russell Gage, man. That dude's dealt with some blows. Like since signing in Tampa, he gets that big deal, and it has just been injury after injury. This one, of course, going to sideline him for the entire season. So you hate to see it. No doubt. And football wise, he was going to be a big part of this team. I think he had a lot to prove this year, but that's stuff we all already know. What I'm curious to get your input on, JC, is who's got the beat on this third receiver role, the slot receiver, whether or not they now are going to feel obligated to put Godwin in there. Is it Devin Tompkins? Like, how are you seeing the receiver room shake out? Because that's an intriguing battle. Anyway, with some of the young talent that we've seen, guys like Raheem Jarrett, Trey Palmer, right? Big game Trey, or whatever they're calling him. Like, what are your thoughts, man? Like, what do you see happening there? How are they going to fill the void for Russell Gage?
Yeah, so I think obviously Evans and Godwin are 1A, 1B, right? But I think you're going to see a lot more movement than they wanted to with Godwin. I think they really wanted to play him on the outside mostly and have him stay out of the slot. But now you'll probably see him a little bit more in the slot than they would have liked to have him in there, but he'll still get plenty of reps outside as well. As far as replacing Gage, it's not going to be any one player. Don't expect any one player to be that guy. They have a bunch of guys that they feel really confident in. Obviously, Trey Palmer is one of them. Devin Tompkins has been nothing but outstanding throughout camp. Even with his small stature, his ability to go up and get it is just unbelievable.
Tompkins is a G, man. Shout out Devin Tompkins. That guy's nasty. I want to see him get run, man. Like I want to see him when the lights are on. He's earned it.
He's going to. I think they're all going to. I think at this point, I think Raheem Jarrett is probably going to make the team with the signing bonus they gave him, with what he just showed in just the second half alone. And I think probably David Moore is your other guy. I think those are your 6 wide receivers, and they'll all see playing time. I think they're all rotate in. It's going to be a wide receiver 3 by committee. They're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. If you saw the unofficial depth chart, for this week, you saw that it went from the first 2 weeks had 3 wide receivers listed. This week had 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. So expect to see a lot of 12 personnel as well. Establishing that run game is going to be really important to this Bucs team this year. So you're going to see, a bunch of different personnel groupings. The thing that I love about Canales' offense is doesn't matter what personnel grouping they're in, they have ways to make any type of personnel grouping out there look like it's something different. They can run any play out of whatever package they're in, whether that's with the running backs they have, with the Sean Tucker, with the Chase, with the Rashad White, splitting them into the slot, splitting them out wide, movement like that, causing motion, pre-snap movement, all that stuff is going to be utilized hugely in this offense to really kind of confuse defenses and saying, okay, well, we saw this on tape last week out of this personnel, but now they have the ability to call something completely different out of that personnel to catch defenses off guard. So that includes the wide receiver position. There's going to be multiple guys rotating in and out, getting their snaps, getting their talking to some of the guys in there. These guys are hungry. Told them let them eat, and I think they're going to eat this season.
Yeah, and what a breath of fresh air that'll be to see some diversity in terms of the types of looks the offense is going to give you, right? That's Canales' thing, right? It's not complexity in terms of the actual route trees or the things that they're running or even the scheme. It's more how you're disguising it in different looks, right? To keep the defense on their heels. So
correct. With Tom Brady, so I was going to say, with Tom Brady, as great as he is, he's one of his work with his wide receivers are one of the most complex that the league has ever seen. I mean, you have different looks based on the line, the coverage that you're getting at the line, the coverage that at the top of your route to change your route to a certain way, to the pressure, like as a wide receiver. And that's why you never saw any Patriots rookies really shine through, just because of what Brady demands out of those guys. This is going to be a completely different thing where they're going to utilize, all sorts of different pre-snap motion, different looks, different things to get these guys open. You've heard Mike Evans. I haven't been open in this forever. I'm going to face far less double teams, working out of the slot. It's going to be really creative. It's going to be fun to watch. It's not going to be anything like the last 3 years.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we're not all blinded just because of the inept offense we've been subjected to under Byron Leftwich, and that actually comes to fruition in the regular season. You know what I mean? That's my only fear.
It wasn't so much that it was inept. It was that if you don't have the correct players to run it with, then it's becomes easy to defend and easy to figure out. When they had Gronk and AB in there, you can't cover everybody. So it makes it you can play best on best when you have a full starting last year, depleted offensive line, depleted, in the tight end position. You didn't have 5 potential Hall of Famers at skill positions, so it made it much more difficult. And the ineptitude was just Byron not changing it, not figuring out, okay, this isn't working. My guys can't just go out there and win best on best. How do I team them open? How do I make it better? And that's something that Canales is going to bring in droves.
Fair enough. That's a good distinction you made there, but the inability to change is what just drove me and every other Bucs fan on the planet up the wall. Talking about Canales and his system, lots of 12-man personnel. That's a staple in Seattle. Here's a concern I have, JC, and that is this team being far too dependent on what I consider a very shallow tight end room, at least what they've done so far, right? That's a big leap you're expecting from Cade Otton, and there's no doubt he has the tools to do it. But let's not forget, he was still a 4th-round pick, right? Last year. Cole Keith, another rookie. You got David Wells, and then you got Payne Durham, a rookie this year. I have concerns about that group being able to shoulder the load. I mean, can you play devil's advocate here for me, JC, and calm me down a little bit?
I can a little bit. Noah Fant, was drafted as a 2nd-round draft pick, never really quite lived up to the expectations of the draft pick, right? You look at what that Seattle tight end room did last year, over 102 catches, combined. And you look at the guys on there, Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, None of those guys jump out to you. None of them scream out. Disley's been all right in fantasy, and that's the only reason you know his name, because he's had a couple of good fantasy games, scoring multiple touchdowns, right? Otherwise, no one would know who Will Disley is. So it's not necessarily about the guys in there. I think it's a more about the system and how they're schemed to make impact on this team. And I think Cade Otton, if he can give you what Disley gave you, which was he came pretty clear, around 50 catches, 500 yards, somewhere around there. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for Cade Otton. Especially he's had a full offseason to work on his body, get bigger. I think David Wells is someone they really like, even though he's been in the league. He's 28 years old. Hasn't really had much game experience, but they like his blocking and receiving ability. Payne Durham, we've already seen what he can do in the red zone, in the last game against the Steelers. It's just a big body in the red zone. And Keith is going to be your jack of all, your H-back / fullback / blocking tight end, special teams ace. So, with that foursome there, I think they have enough depth and enough ability to utilize, especially in the red zone, utilize them in certain situations. And, you saw Cade Otton out there with Trask, he had 3 catches, all of them went for first downs on third down conversions, or 2 of them went for third down conversions. So, I think they'll be fine there. I understand the lack of depth. The youth is concerning, but if you look at the landscape of the league, really, name the top 10 tight ends, and that 10th tight end, you're kind of struggling. You're like, there's a couple guys that you could put in that spot because none of them really deserve it.
That's a great point, man. Like, anyone who plays fantasy knows, like, if you don't grab like the top 3 tight ends, you're kind of shit out of luck. You might as well wait, right? So,
right, committee,
it's a valid
with Gerald
point.
Everett,
Yeah. Okay, we talked about the game. Sorry, Bo. Go ahead. You have something?
No, I just like Gerald Everett.
Oh, right. Oh, my bad.
Gerald Everett won the fantasy title last year.
Bo is irrationally like a huge Gerald Everett supporter. It's like a.
I'm waiting for his big breakout every season, basically.
Yeah. So we talked about the Gage injury. JC, man, you've been closely monitoring how Ryan Jensen walks dating back to this time last year. Like, again, anyone listening to this knows the whole timeline, but like, I couldn't get over last year even, but like, I didn't really create any sort of fuss about it, about how opaque the Buccaneers organization has been in terms of unveiling any details about the injury. Whatever, he ended up coming back. He opted not to have surgery on details that we found out from him, not even from the team at any point. He unveils like PCL, ACL, like bone fragments. Like, it sounds horrific, like a potential career ender. Anyway, he bypassed his surgery on like the 5th opinion, it sounds like. Plays that game. Obviously was a shell of himself, but that's like, how could you blame him for that? Like, he's a warrior. That's Ryan Jensen. Yeah, exactly. And I respect him for that. But this is getting a bit bizarre here. Like, we're all just having to kind of read the tea leaves. Like, what the fuck's going on, JC? Like, is this bad? Like, is he done? Because it sure as hell doesn't look like he's gonna be ready week 1 versus Minnesota.
Yeah, I definitely think he's an IR candidate. To start he'll have the first 4 games. He'll have to sit out, and then he'll be eligible by week 5 to come back. The good news is you went through this last year, right? So Hainsey can do it now. Is Hainsey going to bring that demeanor that Jensen brings, that attitude, that toughness? No, he's not. He's not the same player. But you at least have someone there who's got experience starting a full game season, even though he's only got experience with one of those guys who's going to be a starter. You kind of count Luke Gedeke to an extent, but Baker's has been taking snaps from him and Leverett all offseason, so you have to feel comfortable a little bit in that. Obviously, having Ryan Jensen out there, if he's able to be that guy, is certainly something that you want to have. But it's a serious injury. You gotta kind of have to take your time with it. When he's ready, when he feels he's ready, when he gets cleared that he's ready, he'll be out there. If you don't think Jensen wants to be out there, you're losing. You're out of your mind. He wants to be out there with his boys. At this point in time, though, it's just they have to play that waiting game. So could he be done for his career? Maybe. I don't think so, though. I think we would have already got an announcement on that.
Okay, but then why was he cleared to play 6 months ago? Like
It's a
by the
question.
team?
It's a
Like
$1 million question, right?
Like you have doctors who are paid for this. Like, I'm sorry, as much as I respect Jensen's desire to go out with Tom Brady, you simply cannot allow it then. And like you
I
said,
kind of feel like it's TB12, right? Like,
yeah, but
that's the only thing that makes sense in my head.
But to override medical clearance, like even for Tom Brady, that just feels there's something strange going on. And them being them refusing to communicate anything. Like, give us an update. Like
Status quo.
Did he have a status quo? Exactly. The famous 2 words from Todd Bowles.
Right.
But was it a setback? Is it more complicated than we initially envisioned? Like, I believe some spokesperson for the team put the damn doctor up there. Someone should have to speak to this, because it's not really fair to leave everyone in the dark. I don't think. I mean, if he's hurt, he's hurt. That is what it is. But why you pretend? Like, what is being? I don't know. It's just.
It's just
see why.
It's just one of those things. It's kind of like what Chase. What's his name? What's the dude from the Bengals? I want to call him Chase. Jamar Chase. I call him Chase Jefferson, but that's not right. Jamar Chase said it about Joe Burrow. I'd rather see him week 5. I'd rather him heal up and see him week 5. And I think this is the type of situation the Bucs are in. He's doing all the walkthroughs. He's got the installs down. It's not like he's not in the meeting room. It's not like he's not doing the walkthroughs. He's just not out there in pads in camp. And while that can be frustrating for sure, especially not getting that injury information, Jensen is not a guy I don't think that needs to. I don't think he needs a ramp up period. I think when he's ready to go, he'll ramp himself up and he'll be able to go. And you'd rather have him from weeks, because you have the bye week and week after week 4. You'd rather have him from week 6 on than have him suffer a setback in those first 4 games. You pull him off the IR after the 4th game. He gets that full 2 weeks to prepare for game 6 for the 6th or game 5, but week 6. And there, now he's back and the line is gelling, and your depth just gets even that much better on the offensive line with Hainsey going back to the bench. So, it's just what they're going to do.
And I do love Hainsey, and I think his performance last year, switching positions, guys switched positions 3 times, like dating back to college. I thought he played really well last year. So I completely am with you on that. But I think the biggest setback was Jensen playing in that game, and only the medical professionals knew. But I got to get over that. I just hope Jensen's all right, and I hope we get some clarity in terms of what's going on. But I think I've made that abundantly clear.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. Kalijah Kancey. We haven't got to look at him, but it seems like he's trending in the right direction. He was out there today. I'm really excited to see him play, man. I got to say, and I want to kind of tie this to Logan Hall's underperformance, at least like that last preseason game. I think people were expecting that to be the type of opportunity where he could kind of show us some of the juice that made him the Buccaneers' first pick in that draft. We certainly didn't see it. And I'm curious, first off, is Kancey going to be ready to rock for week 1? And what are your expectations for Logan Hall this year, whether Kancey's good for week 1 or not?
I think Kancey should be fine for week 1. We're seeing them start to kind of ramp back up. He doesn't have a brace or a sleeve or anything like that. I think Kancey's going to be fine. Talking to Logan Hall before he spoke today, he told me for a minute that Kancey is head and shoulders above where he was when he came in. Just kind of, as far as an understanding of the defense wise. He's another guy. He's doing all the walkthroughs, getting all the installs. He's in the meetings. He's got the physical attributes. I think he's going to be fine to step in. Will there be some growing pains first couple of weeks of the season? I think the whole team's going to have some growing pains. Especially, defensive line with a couple new starters, offensive line, obviously with a bunch of new starters, new system, etc. But I think he'll be fine. He's got that speed, athleticism that can make up for some mistakes, right? When you're that quick, when you're that fast, when you're that strong, you can kind of fall back on your athletic traits, even if you don't have everything down. But from what I'm hearing, he is a very bright individual, and he has got this defense down very well to the point where we know how difficult Todd Bowles. I mean, he drops Vita Vea in coverage for Christ's sakes. So we know how difficult Bowles defense can be to grasp, right? So for him to have that good of an understanding from what I'm hearing from not just players but other people in the building, I have no real concerns about him other than just knocking the rust off, right? As far as Logan Hall, I think people need to kind of temper their expectations. The last two preseason games, their preseason games, he did get a pressure against Zach Wilson, but I think Logan Hall's out there next to Greg Gaines, and nothing on Greg Gaines. He's not next to Vita Vea. He's not with the starters out there. It's a little bit easier to pay attention to one of your best players on the field when you're going with one starter and a bunch of backups to make sure you game plan, or not even game plan because you're not game planning in the preseason, but emphasizing we got to stop Logan Hall. Let Greg Gaines beat us. Let Mike Green beat us. Don't let Logan Hall beat us. He was almost a first round pick for a reason. We need to make sure that we're stopping him and not letting him hurt us if he's going to be starting. It's almost like the JTS treatment last year. A lot of people, obviously, JTS needs to finish. He knows that. We've talked about that. But at the same time, when Shaq goes out and you put Anthony Nelson across from JTS, where do you think they're lining up their tight end? Where do you think they're positioning their running back? On Anthony Nelson's side or Joe Tryon-Shrinker's side? So I think the kind of same thing applies to those first two preseason games. Hall's bulked up. He's got a better understanding of not just his position, the defensive line, and the defense as a whole. And I think that's going to help him, especially when he's up next to Vita Vea, with Shaq or JTS on his right hip. There'll be a lot more to worry about for defenses other than just stopping Logan Hall and not worrying about Mike Green when it's Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea. Plus, it's going to help too. I mean, you got to remember the whole point of getting Kalijah Kancey was to help the edge guys, and that's including Logan Hall with his speed and his ability to get after the quarterback. You push that quarterback, you push that pocket in the middle. Quarterback's got to move to the left or right, and the hope there is with Kancey's speed, Vea's speed, and their strength and athleticism, that they'll be able to push that pocket in the middle, forcing that quarterback to make a decision. Do I go right towards Joe Tryon-Shrinker? Do I go left towards Shaq and Logan Hall? And hopefully, key there is that these guys are going to be right there with open arms like Jerry waiting to sack them.
Speaking of Shaq Barrett, how did he look to you? Because I'm hearing pretty good things, like coming off a ruptured Achilles tendon, but did he pass the eye test for you, or still working his way back, JC?
I think he's fine. With Achilles, one of the biggest things is you're looking for loss of athleticism and speed, burst. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well, and he's a guy who depends on that speed too, though, right? So that's why.
Right. So one of the things too that he's worked on a lot is technique as well, just refining technique. When you're not playing too a lot of the time, that's the first thing you lose. Is your technique. So you have to. I mean, Jamel Dean talked about this. Is when you're not playing, you got to brush up on your technique. And with him coming off that Achilles, and turning the corner on 30, he's going to have to rely more on his smarts, his technique, his ability to set guys up, his ability to have a pass rush plan where he's setting guys up throughout the game to be able to capitalize on certain looks, certain instincts where he's going to come across your body, then boom, spin move. Guy's not ready for it because he's ready for you to come across his body. That's going to be important for him as he gets older in his career, is to be able to set these guys up to expect one thing, and then when they're expecting it, do something else, and that's going to get him a free lane to the quarterback. So I think that's something he's worked on. I'm not worried about the edge rushers, either of them. I'm not worried about JTS, not worried about Shaq. I'm not worried about Anthony Nelson. He's steady Eddie. He's going to do what he do. He's not going to give you anything flashy, but he's going to be a presence there. Not worried about Yaya. He's going to get it. I think it might take some games to get under his belt, some rotational snaps. But one of the positions on this team I'm not worried about, other than starting secondary, because secondary depth scares the hell out of me, is the edge rushers. I think they're fine. I think it's a deep enough group, and I think they all are going to take a big step, especially with Coach Edwards there, who's obviously done wonderful things with Micah Parsons and Jared Allen down the line before that.
I even think Jason Light's done a fantastic job with the whole D line. Like, I really like the depth that they've got there and the combination of veterans and then youthful guys. Like, we're talking about JTS being similar to Logan Hall, which is a very apt point. Like there are a lot of comparisons there in terms of how the fan base is reacting or expecting maybe too much from them. But I feel like one of those guys is going to pop. And like, I think at some point, you know what I mean? Like they're not both going to be strikes. And then I don't know.
The thing about JTS too is a lot of people forget that when he was a rookie, he was A, playing out of position, and B, splitting time with Jason Pierre-Paul, who was borderline useless, battling like a neck injury, an arm injury.
Yeah.
So he didn't get a chance to play. Last year was and he sat out all of 2020 because of COVID. So, last
He
year
barely
was his
played in
first.
college. Like
Last
injuries,
year was his first year starting at his natural position. And then Shaq goes down. So now all the emphasis and pressure is on him. Now he's got to do better at wrapping. He's got to do better at finishing because he had 4 sacks, probably let 4 or 5 go. And he knows that. I've spoken to him personally. He knows that. And he's been working his ass off to have that, to take care of that. Now we have to see it. You got to prove it. Talk all you want, just like everything on this team. There's a lot of talk on this team, and it's a lot of things to be positive about if all this talk goes well. But at the end of the day, all these guys, JTS, the offense, everybody, they got to prove it. You got to put your money where your mouth is and walk the walk after you talk the talk. So it'll be interesting. But if they strut, boy, they could be strutting to a nice little, 11-win season, wrap up the division, and maybe a surprise win in the playoffs. I mean, I think that's this team's ceiling. Now their floor is, top 10 pick. I won't go as high as 5, but top 10 pick easily.
Now, I don't want to keep you here all night, but I have a couple more things I want to get your quick takes on, if you don't mind, before we let you get out.
I don't have anything called quick takes. You know that I'm a rambler, but I'll try my best.
That's how I keep you around. Yeah. Okay. It looks to me like D. Delaney has established himself as a starting nickel for this team. When they got 5 DBs out there, do you agree with that? Or like, I know, like this is where the lack of depth begins, right? In the secondary that you spoke about, which along with the right side of the starting O-line, I would say are the 2 biggest concerns for me coming into this year, like the unproven nature of that or the lack of depth beyond those starters. What do you think? You got Izzian. I don't know if I even say his name right. Christian Izzian, who's a guy they talked about a lot out of Rutgers as like a guy who could be in the mix there. But D. Delaney had, and I know it's preseason, but he looked sharp against the Jets in that preseason game. Like he was flying around. He's very familiar with Todd Bowles' defense, and that matters a lot to Bowles and just a familiarity amongst those other guys back there, the corners anyway, and Antoine. Like, what do you think? You think it's going to be Delaney's job to start?
It's so funny when we talk about D. Delaney because you remember 2 years ago when he first made the team, we're like, D. Delaney, what the hell are you doing, Bruce? And now he's worked himself into probably one of the most valuable players. He's probably the 5th most valuable player in that secondary because of his ability to play outside corner, ability to play nickel corner, and where he got his interception at. People see, D. Delaney cornerback. He was playing safety when he got his pick. And his second one that got reneged, he was at safety too. So he can play all those positions. So when you look at D. Delaney, they really like Christian Izzian. He could definitely be the starter at nickel, but I don't know if he's their ultimate insurance policy because we just talked about the depth, right? You got Zion McCollum, who, has definitely taken a big step after him. The depth behind him is not there. It's not there. You're going to probably have an undrafted free agent or Anthony Chesley in that 5th spot unless they find someone on waiver wires.
What about Merriweather? What about Kayvon Merriweather?
Safety, Kayvon Merriweather, Christian Izzian, 2 undrafted guys. Nolan Turner probably is back on the practice squad if I would, I would think, just because he's not that great of an athlete. He's good. He's shown up in training camp in red zone. He's made a couple interceptions in red zone. He's just not that great of an athlete. He doesn't have great coverage range. He's good on special teams, but that's pretty much all he's going to provide for you. And if he's got to go into a game for any meaningful snaps, then you're worried about it. So I think you look at this secondary and you could have at least 3 undrafted guys making the team, which is kind of like scary. So the thing is, they want Christian Izzian to win this job and really take it over. I think you will see him with the first team reps on Saturday. If he can hold his own against the Ravens first team, their slot corner, I think it was Rashad Bateman, their slot corner over there. I'm not sure. But he'll have every opportunity to go up against them. And if he falters, if he shows that he can't prove it, they know they have D. Delaney to fall back on. But being able to utilize with D, it's do you want to lock him in that starting nickel position, or do you want to have him as that ultimate reserve who can play outside because remember, everyone in that secondary, Antoine Winfield, Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, they've all missed time at least one game over the last 3 years,
Oh yeah.
So do
They're
you
gonna
want
need
to lock him into that position and not give Izzy that ability to grow in that position as your nickel, and then be kind of screwed with the guy who's got 0 game reps? Or do you want to hold on to D. Delaney and use him as the ultimate insurance policy and then plug him in there if you have to, if Izzy really falters? So I think that's their plan with him.
Yeah, the value is there for that versatility piece, right? That's why he's still here now. So Bowles wants to keep him in a role like that. RB2, man. I'm hoping it's Sean Tucker. I'm hoping that Sean Tucker kind of takes over that second string running back position. What percentage chance do you give that of actually happening? And what would you do if you were the coach?
By the end of the season, 100%. I think Sean Tucker will be RB2 by the end of the season. I think for right now, to start the season, they'll probably roll with Chase, just because he's looked sharp in camp. He's a little banged up right now, but nothing that should keep him out of Minnesota week 1. But I think they'll go with Chase as the guy right now, and eventually throughout the season, Tucker will overtake him. The odd man out, I think, is probably going to be Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, we were just discussing that. Scott Reynolds' 53-man roster prediction came out. He's only got the team keeping 3 running backs. Keyshawn Vaughn, he doesn't do much on special teams. He does play 1 or 2 units, but he just hasn't looked great. He's not a thumper back, and he doesn't have the speed like the other guys do to really excel, I think, in the mid to wide zone offense. He started off as RB2 coming in. He was quickly replaced by Chase Edmonds. And I think with Sean Tucker's ability and what he's shown even behind an even porous line, I think he's quickly, has overtaken him as RB3. So do you keep Keyshawn Vaughn at RB4? Do you open it up for another spot and try to stash him on the practice squad, or a guy like Patrick Laird, or who's got game experience and was with the team last year, or Ronnie Brown? Maybe you keep both of them as developmental guys. So Sean Tucker, RB3 to start the season, RB2 to end the season.
Okay. I like it. Chase McLaughlin is Ryan Succop's successor. Now, this guy, how interesting is this? I don't know if you knew this. He entered the draft. He went undrafted in just 2019. This will be McLaughlin's 10th team.
Yeah. He's bounced around quite a bit.
And that's not even including a second stint he had with Minnesota. So he played for the Vikings that signed him twice. Why are you concerned about the fact he hasn't been able to stick despite 10 different franchises?
No, because I think what he showed, he's a kicker, and I think they tend to bounce around a lot, but Justin Tucker's are few and far between. But I think he showed the ability last year to be consistent, right? 2 questions. Okay, he was playing inside the dome, and his consistency from deep was great, but those shorter kicks, he missed a few of them. So, when it becomes between Hot Rod, Blankenship over there, or Chase McLaughlin, I think they made the right choice. McLaughlin definitely has a stronger leg. He's got a lot of confidence. He's kicked in a lot of places, kicked in a lot of environments. So I'm fine with it. They had to get rid of Succop. Succop just wasn't doing it. He was good up close, but he really, was nothing past 40 yards. So they had to upgrade that. I don't think there was a kicker in the draft worth a draft pick or anything like that. So I'm fine with it. I'm sure he'll miss a few, and fans will act like it's the end of the world, and the curse of Matt Bryant has come back around. But we'll see. I think it was the right move with the kickers they had on the roster. I'm more surprised they kept a long snapper on the team, backup long snapper throughout all of camp, than anything.
True,
a backup long snapper. No offense
funny.
to Deckers, but hey.
Normally you just scoop one up when you need one, a backup.
Right.
Okay, JC, you've been very generous with your time, my dude, and I appreciate it. I can't let you get out of here without one more, though.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta ask, how nice does it feel to be interviewing a guy with the energy, enthusiasm of Dave Canales? I mean, you and Byron Leftwich have a storied history with one another. You got one of the best sound bites he's ever dropped, man, and appreciate you for it. I love that. How are you enjoying your interactions with Dave Canales?
Dave is absolutely amazing person. Take away the coaching aside, I know you listen to every one of these guys, and it's all the same. I love Coach Canales. I love
Didn't he
Coach
give you?
Canales.
He gave you guys like an hour hit on Pewter Report
He did.
podcast. I listened to
Yep.
that. That was a fantastic interview,
Yep.
by the way.
And it's always thought out. It's detailed, sometimes a little too much detail. But he's just, not only is he an awesome coach, the players love him. The players, I've actually gotten to spend time with him a little bit too. And he's just a great man too. So really excited to further cover him, get to know him a little bit more, and just see what his offense could do. Because I think if everything clicks, he might be a hot commodity.
Yeah, let's hope so, man. Let's
You
hope.
can resurrect two quarterbacks' careers, like if he does it with Baker, like he did with
man.
Geno. Team's going to be clamoring for him, that's for sure.
Fair enough. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But you could be as good of a, you know what? Good guys have walked the plank before, back on those pirate ships. Let me tell you. So if he doesn't, if it doesn't go into action and translate on the field, then who knows what'll
Absolutely.
happen. But I hope it does. I hope it does. JC, thank you for your insight, my dude. And if you don't know, if you're not following JC Allen on Twitter, you're stupid and you should. At JC Allen NFL, constant covering the beat, reporting for Pewter Report, doing a fantastic job. Same with the rest of those guys over at Pewter Report. You can catch my work at bucsgameday.com, Sports Illustrated's only website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Follow Bo on Twitter while you're at it, at Bo Knows Ball. And please make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast to get more access to great insight from great guests such as JC Allen. Till next time, folks, we'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.